Of technical difficulties this morning. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to Nature News Live. I'm Alice Ford, and today I am here to talk about something super important, and that's our water. So today, hopefully, we are streaming live on Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, and also on Twitch. So if you're joining me in the chat, give me a hello. Let me know that you're here. If you have questions about our water, or the drinking water that comes out of our faucet, or any sort of water pollution, let me know. In yesterday's Nature News, I talked about wildlife, and I talked about a case in Kentucky where they are not able to drink the water here in the United States. So I wanted to give you some facts about water and why we should be concerned about it, because water is our most important natural resource, and we all need to be more aware of what we should be doing to protect it, and how we should also, be investigating our own water sources to make sure that the water we're drinking is good for us. And hi in the chat to David Larkin. Thank you so much for joining. I am happy to be here. Happy Sunday to all of you guys. And I hope you guys are all having a fantastic weekend. And first of all, just thank you for taking some time out of your day to join me, because I really appreciate it. Hi, Paul, also. Great to have you in the chat. Thank you for joining. So I wanted to give you guys some facts about water. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube or Twitch, I do have my Instagram live chat over here to my right. So if you see me looking over there, that's me looking at the chat to see if anyone over there has questions also. But yeah, drop me your comments, your questions, if you guys have questions about water. So only 1 in 3 people actually have access to clean, safe drinking water, which, when you think about 7 billion people being on this planet, and only 1 in 3 of those people being able to drink water, which I've got a glass of water right here. That's like the first thing I do when I get home, is have a nice cold glass of water. And I think probably a lot of you are in that same boat with me. Water is so important to our health, and there's so many ailments that people have, and diet problems and weight gain and things like this can actually be solved if you just drank more water. But we need to make sure that we have safe water, right? And that it's clean. So I did get some questions from social media on the topics of water, but I also wanted to just bring up the larger issues that we are going to find about water also. So Frank Martin on Twitter, he actually said, we're always on the edge he lives in Northern California, and drought is a really big issue there. He said things could definitely be worse, but he's really sad to see that so many communities in America can't even get potable water. And I don't know where any of you guys live, but that's a really big concern, because in the Central Valley in California, which is where all of our food comes from, or most of it for this country, they actually don't have potable water there. They have no running tap water in a lot of the communities there. Because farming has taken so much of the water system, it's actually dried up the aquifer completely, and so there's no more running water there. So there's a huge issue with water in this country. And I do want to just go to Andrew in the chat, who just said, what's the process of cleaning up a river or water body after a coal spill or another issue? Thank you so much for asking that. And this is actually part of the news that I talked about yesterday in Nature News, because the city in Kentucky that's dealing with the water problem right now, the water problem actually arose from a coal mining spill, where they spilled slurry, which is basically this mixture of arsenic and mercury and other chemicals that basically come out of the coal mining process, and it spilled into some rivers and streams and into the groundwater. So I will say that the process of cleaning this up is not easy. Similar things have happened in Colorado and other states also, and for years basically they haven't been cleaned up. So you have to mitigate the stream. You basically have to try and block the flow of the stream to get out what you can from the surface, and then you have to put in filtration systems underground within the city water as well. It's a very, very difficult process, and it's definitely not easy to do. Now, the way to fix this is to not allow these coal mines to have slurry ponds that are within drinking water areas. There is another question in the Instagram chat from Earth Zebra, who said there would be water if the EPA gets out of the way. That is absolutely not true. The EPA is the entire reason why we have clean water in this country. If we got rid of the EPA, then we would have no regulation, and the water systems in this country would be far, far worse off. Now, I will say that the Clean Water Act, the Safe Water Drinking Act, created by the EPA, it could be better, but without the EPA, we would be in a much worse boat. Because if we had no EPA, then there would be no government protecting our streams, our wetlands, our drinking water. There would be no minimums as far as total dissolved solids and things like that that create the standard for protection for people in this country. Now, it's our cities and it's our state governments that have done a poor job at upholding the rules of the EPA. So that's one of the big problems. So Earth Zebra, I don't know what state you live in, but the EPA sets the standard. It is up to the states, the local governments, the local city ordinances to make sure that they're basically upholding those rules and doing a good job. Also in the chat, Earth Zebra just said, protecting a fish that could release that water. I'm not sure what you're asking there, but the EPA is vitally important in protecting our clean water in this country. So I do not agree with you there. I think that would be a terrible idea to get rid of the EPA. It's very important to the protection of clean water. And on that note, one of the things that the EPA has done was set up the Clean Water Act, and then with that is the Safe Water Drinking Act. And in that is what basically made standards of how much total dissolved solids of different chemicals and pollutants can be in our water. Now, the WHO also has similar standards for the world for clean water. Typically, also just saying hi to John in the chat from the Philippines. Nice to have you. Thank you so much for joining. Typically anything with less than 500 parts per million of total dissolved solids is okay to drink, but there are lots of places in the world, and even in the United States, that have double that, or over 1,200 parts per million. And there's ways that you can test this if you're worried about your own water where you live. You can actually get off Amazon or even at the hardware store for less than $60, I think maybe even less than $30, you can get basically a water testing kit. And in this water testing kit, you get a slurry of different, basically little pieces of paper. Each one you put into your water, and it's going to tell you how much total dissolved solids or how much parts per million you have of that particular chemical, or like lead, different items like that. So Andrew in the chat also just said Flint, ? Yeah, actually they're still dealing with issues in Flint, Michigan. And for those of you that are watching that might have heard about Flint, Michigan, which was several years ago now, people in Flint, Michigan still cannot drink the water. They still have not fixed that issue. Now, the issue with Flint, Michigan was actually lead, and that was due to basically a very big breakdown in the system of water, how water it goes from the sewage treatment plant and the water filtration plant into people's homes. Andrew just asked in the chat also, is Flint a failure on the EPA or the local government of Michigan? And it is a failure of the local government in Michigan. Now, what happened with Flint basically was, the water was polluted from where they were getting the water. And unfortunately, there was too much pollutants in the river that Flint, Michigan gets its water from. They tried to get water, they knew of the problem, and they tried to then get water from Detroit, who had been getting water from a different river than Flint. Detroit said no. So Flint said, all right, well, we can't afford to fix the problem, so we're just basically going to keep it quiet and hope that nobody notices. I mean, that's basically what happened. So obviously people started getting sick. People started noticing that their water was brown, and eventually the media caught on to it enough so that it got national exposure and national attention. And that's why we know about Flint. But I mean, this had been going on for many, many years. And basically the city government just said, we don't have enough money to fix this issue, so we're not going to fix it. And it was coupled with the fact that because the water was so dirty, and then they had really old lead lined piping underneath the streets going to people's homes, basically what was happening was that, this water that was coming out of the water plant was caustic, and it was causing lead to leach out of those pipes because it was so caustic. Now, normally this wouldn't happen. I mean, we have lead piping pretty much all over America. I'm sure other countries have it too. And normally lead pipes don't leach, but if you put certain substances inside of them that pull the metals and the toxins out of it, then they will leach. And that's exactly what happened in Flint, because the water was so bad that it was actually just like pulling the metal out of the piping, to kind of like explain it in a way that makes sense, I think, to a lot of people. And that was really bad. And they still haven't completely fixed the problem, because it would mean they would have to, completely overhaul the filtration system in Flint. And then also they have to pull up all of the lead piping and replace it, because that lead piping is now bad. Andrew also just asked if I've worked with Matt Damon's company, water.org, and if I know what they do specifically. No, water.org is a great organization. I haven't worked with them specifically, but I definitely would love to. Matt Damon is one of the kind of like celebrity endorsers of water.org. And water.org is a great charity. So if you are wanting to help people in other countries, water.org is a great organization you can give a donation to. They actually help provide clean, safe water, either by building wells, or they provide filtration kits and filters to places also all around the world. They do a lot with humanitarian efforts. And they're doing a lot right now actually with COVID-19, because, as I said earlier, only 1 in 3 people have access to clean water. What is the one thing that we've heard over and over again with COVID is that you need to wash your hands. Well, there's so many people that can't wash their hands, right? Because they don't have running water. They certainly don't have access to clean water. So water.org is helping with that right now. And normally they help build wells and build water filtration places for small towns in Africa and other places, in other parts of the world that are struggling with keeping their water clean, or just don't have any of this. So, and thank you guys for joining in the chat that are just coming on too. So we're just talking about water, and if you have questions or comments or concerns about your local water or water around the world, that's kind of what we're chatting about. So yeah, water.org helps with that. And, one of the other things to note is that an estimated 800,000 children actually under the age of 5 die every year from diarrhea, from not having clean water. So, and these are mostly in developed countries, but it's about 11% of the deaths of children under the age of 5 are due to dirty water. So, I mean, that's pretty staggering. Can you imagine in this country if we had 4 times the amount of people that have died from COVID-19 dying from dysentery or diarrhea? It's pretty crazy when you think about those numbers. Andrew also just said, outside the EPA, what other companies or organizations deal with water issues in the U.S.? Well, that's a long and short answer, I would say, because, in America, I mean, the EPA sets the standards, right? It's up to the states. It's your city, it's your municipal government. So, and every state in the constitution of that state, like California, it's in their constitution, it's in the constitution of every state that they have to provide for you clean air and clean water. It is a constitutional right in your state. And so it's up to the state municipal board. So like your governor's office, if you have a water concern in the city or state that you live in, you would need to first call your county water board and deal with it from there, file a complaint, ask, all these cities and counties also are required to send out a statement every 6 months, I think, that shows you exactly what's in your water. So they have to do tests on your water and show you exactly, they'll dissolve solids, how much lead, how much magnesium, how many total dissolved solids, how much lead, how much magnesium, like all the different elements that may be in your water. They have to send that out to you in the mail and provide that for anyone that gets water from that facility. So in Los Angeles, we actually have pretty good water. It tastes good, at least, and I've actually tested it before with a water testing kit. It was, nothing of note, really. That was bad. We also filter our water here in Georgia. Actually have an under the sink water filter, because the water here does not taste good, and I'm sure there is things in it that I do not want to drink. Andrew also just said, I believe in LA, if you feel your water is bad, they'll send you a test and then send out a water tech to test your water on site. Is that true? Yeah, actually that is true. And LA, they've even done this on the news. They did it on Good Morning America a couple years ago, but they tested the water in Los Angeles and New York City actually, and the water was really, really good. Now there are cities in a lot of places in this country where the water is not good, and they do not go to that length in other cities, to my knowledge, as Los Angeles does, in making sure that your water is good. So that's like a really nice benefit, right, of Los Angeles, that they're willing to go to those lengths to make sure that you have clean water. And when you have a city that has 17 million people, I think you have to do that. But it's all of these places in rural America, right, where they don't have necessarily the infrastructure that a big city has, that are having trouble providing clean water, especially in areas where there have been mining or industrial pollution, where they're now faced with multiple issues, right? Because you've got a small town with maybe 10,000 people. There's not a lot of people paying taxes into that local government, but it's that local government's responsibility to provide clean drinking water. And if there's a mining spill, or if there's underground pollution into the aquifer from something in another town, maybe even, then it makes it really difficult for these cities and towns to provide what they're supposed to for local residents. And Andrew just asked, how can cities like Flint get away with the water issue? Is there a way the local government can, is the way that local can hold their local government accountable? And if they don't have the money to fix the issue, can the federal government step in? Well, I think this is where they're really running into issues. So basically Flint, I believe, went to the EPA and are asking for funding. And they've basically gone to the federal government and asked for funding. I'm not sure where they are with that, so that's something that I'll have to look a little bit more into. But this is the hard thing, because as a local person, if you live in Flint, unless you drill your own well, then your options really are to get a water filtration system for your home, which obviously not everyone can afford. But I would recommend, getting a under the sink or a on your faucet water filter that basically gets rid of 99% of total dissolved solids. It would help, definitely. And hello, Arjun from India. Thank you for joining in the chat. So there's unfortunately not a lot you can do, which is the problem, I think, with when we rely on city infrastructure and then city infrastructure fails. It makes it really difficult for us to have a quick solution. And we're seeing this more and more in so many places. Right after Flint, Michigan, there was another instance in New Jersey where basically a lot of the elementary schools and high schools had lead in the water, and it's up to that city then to fix that. And everyone just points fingers at everybody else, and then nothing happens. So you definitely need to, I think, raise your complaints to the highest level that you possibly can. I mean, in Flint, Michigan, the only thing that helped really was getting media attention. And it's even more difficult in these places where it's mostly minority populations or people in poverty. So I think we need to do a better job electing the correct people into positions of power in this country that actually want to look out for the public health of this nation and make sure that we are protected as people in this on this planet and in this country, you know. And thank you, Andrew, for saying that. He just said, you know, thanks so much for the great info and great to hear the nature updates. And I mean, that just all goes back to why I'm doing this. You know, as a lover of travel and nature, it is so much more about like the public health and culture and people in this planet that I love. And, you know, these live videos, this nature news, like it all came out of a place of passion and love for the people on this planet, because like I'm not going to be able to go and travel if we just continue to pollute our world, and I'm not going to be able to enjoy life if I can't even like go to my faucet and get a glass of water and make sure that I'm healthy. I think one of the things that people forget to think about is that like what you put into your body is so important. What we eat, what we drink, what we surround ourselves with, as far as the factory next door or the park next door. You know, not everyone has access to that. And I think we need to start remembering that if we want to be a healthy person, we need to make sure that the people that are high up in the government that have to protect us, we need to make sure that those people understand that like our air, our water, the trees that are in our neighborhoods, all of those need to be there or we will all die, basically. Not to get like super grim. But yeah, Andrew just said environmental issues shouldn't be a ballot issue. It's a basic human right. It should not be left or right. It's a common goal that everyone wants to support. And yes, that is exactly what I'm trying to say. You know, our environment should be everyone's concern, protecting our air and water. As I said, it's on every state constitution that every American citizen should have access to clean water and clean air. So yes, why is it a political issue? It should not be. We need to get it out of politicians, and just everyone needs to band together on making sure we all have a clean and pollution-free place to live. Philip Jordy in the Instagram chat, hi, how are you? He just said, how about the water used for almond farming? Oh, that's a very good question. He recently read that so much water is being used to cultivate almonds. And yes, so for those of you that don't know, almonds are grown in the Central Valley in California, in one of the most drought-stricken areas of the state. Almonds take up a huge amount of water. It's like 20 gallons per almond or something ridiculous like that. I personally don't eat or drink. I don't drink almond milk anymore because of this same issue. I don't eat almonds anymore actually either. I think it's probably one of the most unsustainable crops you could probably get into if it is grown in California. But unfortunately, now that almond milk is booming, you know, these almond farms in California are growing huge, because now it's like one of the main crops in that area because of how many people have switched over to almond milk, which, you know, it's kind of a catch-22, because it's like we want to have less dairy, right? But now we've switched over to almonds, which is probably more polluting on it, or more environmentally destructive on another level. So it's like we just can never win, right? We're like, oh, we're going to do better and get off dairy. And then it's like, oh, but now we're going to have almonds and we're going to grow them in California where they aren't grown. I mean, I think I'm going to be talking to a food person actually live on one of these in a couple weeks. And we're going to get more into this. But I think bringing up the almond milk thing, I think the thing that we all need to remember about our food systems is to try and just eat like more local. And yes, that's technically local, but I guess eat what would grow in your neck of the woods. You know, I went to the farmer's market this morning. Unfortunately, it's not like fruit season. They don't sell bananas there because I don't live in the islands or Central America, but I think it's important to start understanding like that things have seasons, and to try and eat more locally and more trying to think of the word, but just be more conscious of what you're putting in and where it comes from, how far away it came from, and the process in how it got to be there. And Philip Jordy just says, what's a good alternative for almond milk? I mean, personally, I actually drink flax milk. I am actually a little bit allergic to almonds, so I don't drink those. I also drink coconut milk sometimes. Oat milk is another alternative that you can have other than almond milk. I would say if you do want to drink almond milk, I would just try to find brands that maybe aren't California almonds. I'm sure they're out there. I don't drink it anymore. I would also look for ones that are organic and come from sustainable farms, which I know is a little bit harder to find sometimes. You could also just buy almonds and make your own almond milk. It's actually pretty easy. And Philip Jordy just said oat milk's really popular in Europe. Yes, it is. When I was in Europe, I saw oat milk everywhere. And yep, Andrew just said in the chat, in the YouTube chat, what about oat milk? Yeah, oat milk is great if you love it. It tastes great. It's probably I would say it's probably the smoothest, most similar to milk taste out of all the alternatives. But I like flax milk just because it's high in protein. It still has a lot of great amino acids and vitamins in it, and it tastes pretty good too. And one more question in the chat from H.L. Munch. Thank you for joining. He said the last major wild salmon run is under threat. We need to stop that proposed mine in Bristol Bay. Yeah. So, last week I talked about salmon, and before that the Pebble mine, which actually there was a news article just this week about the Pebble mine that said that, which take it with a grain of salt, I guess, but basically the article said that there was someone listening or posing as a member of this group and was in this meeting, and they heard basically the people of the Pebble mine saying that they hoped that, or planned on basically making this mine last for 200 years, that they were going to double in size of what they had sent over as a proposal. So it would be a lot bigger than what they had originally anticipated. And I agree so much with you, H.L. Munch, because yes, the Pebble mine would create some jobs, right? It would create 2,000 jobs over the course of, I don't know how many years, but basically like a couple hundred jobs during construction, and a couple hundred or a couple thousand jobs once the mine is finished. But the salmon industry basically supports the state of Alaska. And it also feeds millions of people. It also is the only thing that the indigenous communities of Alaska and the Yukon survive on. So I think it's really important that we protect these fisheries and also protect Alaska. It's the last frontier of America. It's really the only place in this country that we haven't destroyed. And the fact that we continue to try and want to destroy it for little tiny gains, it's kind of ridiculous. And the other thing is that this is another subject, but oil and gas drilling and fracking, oil companies have actually come out and said it's no longer economical for us to even drill for oil because the oil prices are so low. Everyone is starting to switch over to renewable. So why would we even want to go and invest in drilling in the Arctic or something like that? Because it just doesn't make sense for us. Obviously, the Pebble mine is for gold and copper, and the big underlying thing with that, I guess, is the reason why they're saying they need this mine is because all of our electronic devices, which I'm on 17 right now, have metal in them. They have gold, they have copper, some of the other really controversial mine projects that are trying to get past, and even in other countries in Patagonia and even New Mexico, are for lithium, which if we switch over to completely electric and then have all these batteries, they are going to need more and more lithium. So with everything we create in this world for our consumption and our transportation, there is going to be environmental degradation, unfortunately. So it's a difficult balance, right? Because it's well, how can we get off oil and gas and switch to something more green? But then how can we make sure that that thing that we're creating that's more green is actually more green? Because even with electric cars, if you live in a state where there's still a coal plant giving you electricity, your electric car is no longer economical because coal for electricity. So H.L. Munch just said, thanks for staying on this issue and getting the word out. Yeah, keep the fish and get rid of the pebble mine. I agree with you guys. I have, I heard a lot from a lot of people on Twitter when I put that video out that was on the pebble mine. And, there's a lot of people that are angry about it, that want the pebble mine. But I think that, I don't know. I don't think that any place, if it's only going to offer a couple hundred jobs for the destruction of an ecosystem, I don't think that's I don't even think that's like the scale is like here. It's like, yeah, sorry, destroying an ecosystem, couple jobs. I don't really think that's even like on the same playing field. So also this mine they've been working on this mine for I think almost 25 or 30 years now. So it's been a really long haul. And I agree with you guys. I don't want to see the pebble mine go forward either. I don't know. I haven't heard any updates from the Army Corps of Engineers on the pebble mine, but I know that the pebble mine group, they still have, I want to say, a week or two left. So we should be hearing an update on that pretty soon as far as the proposal. So basically they were given 90 days to come up with a new proposal that would, and hi to your screen, this is a really long screen name, guys. Sarpaltan Garchiazar. I'm not going to pronounce that right, but hello to you in the chat. Thank you for joining. But yeah, so the pebble mine, they still have, I think maybe over a month left to get this proposal into the Army Corps of Engineers. And they basically have to prove through an entire new plan, which is not an easy thing to do in 90 days, that they will be able to mine for gold and copper and not pollute into the wetlands and streams in that area of Alaska. So, I'm very hopeful that they're not going to be able to prove that, but we're going to see what happens. And what's the date today? September 27th. So I'm just trying to think. I might have to Google this quick and let you guys know in the chat. But I believe that would actually put them after the election. And if that is the case, depending on who wins the White House, we could see that even if they show the Army Corps that they can create the mine with no environmental destruction, if it goes to the Democrats, maybe we see that this just goes away and then it gets blockaded. But if, Trump wins the White House again, he may be able to manipulate his way into making this go forward. So, I think the most important thing in any of this in protecting nature is just to use your voice, get out and vote, make your voice heard, contact your local politicians, contact your local, county commissioners, the media, anyone that you that can help, I think educate the masses on really the things that we all are fighting for and the things that we want to protect in this country so that we can all have safe, healthy lives and so that our children can have safe, healthy lives too. And thank you so much. HL mentioned that in the comments, just said, love your content, keep it up. Thank you so much, guys. Let me just see if there was any other things that I wanted to tell you about water. And I'm really glad that you guys brought up the salmon again, because it is such an important part, I think, of all of our diets. I love salmon. I eat salmon all the time. So it's like my weekly food. So I don't want to see the salmon fisheries go. And obviously, as I talked about last week, there are so many issues working against the fisheries, especially here in the US, and especially for the salmon fisheries, with pollution, with dams, just so many things. I also did want to mention actually this morning, down in Houston, there was a news report that Lake Jackson, Texas, which is outside Houston, they actually have a do not use the water advisory out right now because there is, get this, a brain-eating amoeba that was found in the water system. And unfortunately, a 6-year-old boy actually died on September 8th from drinking the water in his home because of this brain-eating amoeba. And these amoebas are unfortunately being found. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of this before. Down in Texas and Louisiana and some other parts of the South, these amoebas have been found and they have killed people. Every summer I hear of an instance where someone has gone swimming in a swimming hole that doesn't get a lot of flow and that the water is too hot, and it has basically created a great living condition for these amoebas that basically enter your brain through swimming up your nose or get in your mouth or through your eyes, and they go in your brain and they kill you and they give you an aneurysm. And so this is happening more and more often because of poor sewage treatment plants putting dirty water, not having enough filtration, and then the water being too hot from climate change. So I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have ever lived, near a sewage treatment plant, but in Los Angeles, if you go to the beach near Topanga Canyon, there's a sewage treatment plant right up the beach from there, which I don't think a lot of people know. But if you go after a heavy rain, you should not get in the ocean because that water is basically like, hello, sewage in the ocean, and it is not good for you. But this happens in so many places around the country, around the world. I mean, the big problem around the world is that, most people don't even have sewage treatment plants. So lots of issues, but it's just good to be informed. And I hope that some of you guys learned something new here today. And I'm really so happy that all of you joined in. If you've got other issues or other concerns that you have about water, about anything that has to do with nature or our environment, environmental policy, please let me know in the comments. Come and join me here every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Instagram or Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, and come and chat with me about some of the issues that you're facing in your local community or that you're seeing as you travel. I will say also, if you're worried about your water when you travel, I always bring either a life. I will say also, if you're worried about your water when you travel, I always bring either a life straw or a filter that goes in my water bottle if I am traveling somewhere where I'm not sure of what the water quality will be. I try to avoid bottled water everywhere. I don't think that should be something that anyone relies on. Bottled water has a whole horde of other issues that we should not be relying on. So I always recommend everyone to have a water bottle. And if you're worried about finding clean water, get a water filter. But you would be surprised at how many places will actually fill up your water bottle for you. They've got water fountains everywhere these days. I wish in the United States we had a public water system like they do in France, where water wasn't hoarded. Because here in America, one of the things that makes me sad every day is seeing the homeless people not have access to running water. And I think that could be such an easy thing that we could fix, especially in big cities like Los Angeles, New York. We should have water fountains, and we should also have public restrooms that self-clean with antibacterial spray. Population can at least have sanitation. But now I'm getting off on a tangent, and I'll save that for another episode. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're on Instagram, leave a comment. Make sure you share my channel with a friend, and let me know or DM me if you have something that concerns you, again, about nature, the environment, environmental policy, etc. I also put out a new video today on YouTube. If you guys haven't watched, it's a countdown of some of my favorite travel destinations from the last few years. So go check that out after this as well. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe. I will see you guys next week, obviously right here again. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, etc., let me know down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for coming and spending some of your